Okay, Excellencies, scholars, experts, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to this webinar, Europeans for the Belt and Road Initiative. My name is Stephen Brawer. I'm the chairman of the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden, and I will be moderating today's event. The world is presently at a crucial turning point. Will humanity and the nations of the world choose peaceful economic cooperation over escalating conflict and war? This is presently the question that is best resolved by joining hands to build the Belt and Road with the Belt and Road Initiative for Global Economic Development. We of the BRICS, together with our European allies and friends, believe win-win cooperation and a community for a shared future for mankind is the proper direction to move forward. This webinar is the first in a series that will pull together the voices in Europe to advocate joining the Belt and Road as a solution to avoid escalating conflict and war. Today, you will be hearing from the Honorable Ambassador H.E.Cui, China's ambassador to Sweden, as well as speakers from several European nations, Germany, Holland, Greece, Norway, Sweden, Slovenia. And this is a list that I am convinced will be continued and grow as time develops this coming year. That is the objective of this initiative for Europeans for the Belt and Road. President Xi Jinping will very soon be traveling to France, Hungary, and Serbia. So let this be the consolidation of further steps in support of European cooperation with the Belt and Road. It's in that spirit that I welcome our first speaker, China's ambassador to Sweden, Ambassador Aimin. Ambassador, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Respected President Brawer, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in this warm spring season with blooming flowers, it gives me great pleasure to be invited to attend today's webinar and exchange views with you. Your insights will be of great significance to the further deepening of China-Europe cooperation. On behalf of the Chinese Embassy in Sweden, I would like to express my gratitude to BRICS and all the guests. The world today is undergoing profound changes unseen in a century. China and Europe are two major forces for world peace, two major markets for common development, and two major civilizations advancing human progress. Deepening China-Europe exchanges and cooperation is conducive to world stability and prosperity. Both China and Europe stand for upholding the UN-centered international system, support trade and investment, liberalization, and facilitation, and value green, low carbon, and sustainable development. Both sides have similar development goals, highly compatible ideas, and complementary industrial advantages. We have no clash of fundamental interests or geostrategic conflicts, and our common interests far outweigh differences. There is huge potential in deepening China-Europe practical cooperation. At present, the Chinese embassy, the Chinese economy is picking up. we are advancing high-quality development and formation of new quality productive forces. This injects new impetus into China-Europe cooperation and provides new opportunities. Both sides should seize the chance, consolidate cooperation in traditional fields, actively explore cooperation in new areas like green, low carbon, and science and technology innovation, so as to make the pie of interests bigger and bring more benefits to our two peoples. Indeed, China-Europe cooperation also faces multiple challenges. In terms of external environment, the world has entered a new period of turbulence and transformation, with sluggish economic recovery, increased geopolitical tensions, and rampant unilateralism, protectionism, and hegemonism. In terms of cognitive perspective, China and Europe have different historical and cultural backgrounds, and we are at different stages of development. Therefore, some differences and disputes do exist. Some European countries and forces are not adaptable to China's development, have all kinds of doubts, and even make serious misjudgments. In terms of specific practices, some European countries have become increasingly inward-looking. On cooperation with China, there is an increasing tendency to be politicizing, ideology-centric, and overstretching the concept of security. There have ever been attempts to decouple with China in the name of de-risking, to set trade barriers using the excuse of China's overcapacity, to initiate the so-called anti-subsidy investigation, and to groundlessly suppress and contain Chinese enterprises using all kinds of excuses. Such practices not only interfere with the order of fair market competition, jeopardize the positive atmosphere of bilateral cooperation, but also undermine the stability of global supply and industrial chains, which runs counter to the common interests of China and Europe. We should keep the right direction of China-Europe cooperation from a strategic and long-term perspective. Discard prejudice, bridge differences, and work together to explore the way forward. In the face of these challenges and problems, the Belt and Road Initiative, which adheres to the concepts of openness and inclusiveness and the principle of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, transcends the traditional models of international cooperation and is the best choice for China and Europe to resolve differences and achieve win-win cooperation. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping formally proposed the Belt and Road Initiative. Over the past decade, the Belt and Road Initiative has flourished from scratch, injected strong impetus into China-Europe cooperation, and achieved broad, comprehensive, and diverse fruits. Policy coordination has been extensive and in-depth, guided by the political leadership of the Chinese and European leaders. The Belt and Road Initiative has been written into the joint official statements between China and the EU, as well as between China and the UK, France, Germany, etc. China has signed various forms of cooperation documents on the Belt and Road Initiative, such as MOU, protocols, and agreements with nearly 30 countries, including Hungary, Bulgaria, Greece, Portugal, and Switzerland. More and more countries have chosen to join the big family of the Belt and Road construction and ride the China Express train to better realize their own development. Infrastructure connectivity has been fruitful. China-Europe Railway Express has reached 217 cities in 25 European countries and around 87,000 trips. For the first time, China's high-speed trains with a speed of more than 200 kilometers an hour have been exported to Europe, providing better transport services for Hungary and Serbia Railway. The Brawer port in Greece has increased its annual cargo throughput to over 5 million TEU, becoming the fourth largest container port in Europe. Liège and Luxembourg have become new land and air freight hubs between China and Europe, driving the rapid development of land, sea, and air transport between China and Europe. Trade connectivity has improved quality and upgraded. China and Europe are each other's most important trading partner. The Belt and Road Initiative has brought the two markets closer together. In 2023, the trade volume of goods between China and Europe reached $783 billion, with an average trade volume of nearly $1.5 million per minute. Two-way investment between China and Europe has exceeded $250 billion. Companies from both sides remain optimistic about each other's markets. More than 90% of European companies plan to make China their investment destination, and more than 80% of Chinese companies plan to expand their business in Europe. Financial integration has become more diverse. Chinese and European financial institutions have actively participated in the construction of the Belt and Road. 20 EU countries, including Sweden, have joined the AIIB. China has joined the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The Silk Road Fund and the European Investment Fund have jointly established the China-EU Co-Investment Fund. China and the EU are making continuous progress in capital market connectivity and building a long-term, stable, sustainable, and risk-controllable investment of the financing system. People-to-people exchanges have a solid foundation. The two sides have held cultural relics exhibitions, book fairs, film festivals, art festivals, music festivals, cultural year, and tourism year in each other's countries, and have strengthened cooperation in urban architecture exchanges between museums and galleries, and the protection of cultural heritage. Exchanges among non-governmental organizations, think tanks, media, and youth have deepened, forming a pattern of diversified interactions and flourishing cultural and people-to-people exchanges, which has greatly enhanced mutual trust and friendship between our two peoples. Looking ahead, the trend towards a multipolar world will not change. The general direction of economic globalization will not change. The trend of peace, development, and win-win cooperation will not change. The Belt and Road construction between China and Europe has broad prospects. We will continue to hold high the banner of a community with a shared future for mankind. Continue to promote high-quality development and high-level opening up. Take the EU as a key partner in economic and trade cooperation, a priority partner in scientific and technological cooperation, and a trusted partner in industrial and supply chain cooperation. We will strengthen policy communication, understanding, and mutual trust. Advance the Belt and Road cooperation. Better complement each other's strengths in market, capital, and technology. Promote the upgrading of traditional industries and the development of emerging industries. Support the win-win cooperation for mutual benefits between China and the EU. And improve the well-being of our peoples. Dear friends, the well-known European poet Karl Spitler once said that there is no greater happiness than having friends who share the same outlook and destiny with oneself. Let's all work together on the path of jointly building the Belt and Road and join hands to create a better future for mankind. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your insights and actively presenting for us all the both potential and the active involvement of good relations between China and Europe. I think that that sets the basis for how we can go forward with this kind of project that we are working on. So, excellent remarks. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to then give the word now to my colleague, the Vice Chairman of the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden, Mr. Askary, who will share a video of a former Norwegian politician, who is now presently the Vice President of the Green Belt and Road Coalition, and the former UN representative, Mr. Erik Solheim. So, thank you. Let us listen to the remarks of Mr. Erik Solheim.
Hello to everyone at the Belt and Road seminar organized by the Belt and Road Institute of Stockholm. A couple of weeks back, Janet Yellen, the American Secretary of Treasury, went to Beijing, and it was a most interesting visit. Because look what was her advice, or what did she really demand from China? And that was, she said, please China, please, 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 don't overwhelm the world with cheap green products. I thought that was what the world wanted. I also, in fact, thought that was what the United States wanted, because what we really want is a transformation of the world into green, and China is leading that now, and Yellen is calling on China to slow down a little bit on this. This is, of course, contrary to the interest of the world. It's also contrary to the entire thinking of the United States of America for the last at least 100 years, which was that any nation should speed up its production, and based on that, we should trade. And to have trade, well, some nations need to have a surplus, otherwise there is no trade. And Madame Yellen asked China to make sure that it didn't make itself able to sell as much to the world. It should basically consume at home what is now producing for the world. Well, that's contrary to every interest of the United States for so long, and also to economic theory, which is based on the fact that one nation is producing more and another producing more some other product, and then we trade, and then we all develop. And of course, it underlines the fact that China is now the one indispensable nation for the green transformation. China is 60% of all green products: solar, wind, hydropower, electric batteries, electric car, high-speed rail, metros, whatever we can mention of green products. China is 60% or more. China is probably 98% of all electric buses and more than 90% of all solar panels. So the leadership of China is huge. The rest of the world simply need to get up early in the morning if we want to compete with China. This, of course, makes Belt and Road incredibly important, because Belt and Road is a major vehicle to spread Chinese technology, knowledge, and expertise to the world, and for China, of course, to learn from the world in a process of mutual learning. I think there are three main aspects of Belt and Road for the next decade. It will be a massive opportunity to share knowledge and invest in green technologies, particularly renewables. Chinese companies are the lead companies in all renewables, like Longye and Tongwei in solar, or China, Three Gorges in hydropower, Goldwinds and Envision in wind power, and CATL and BYD in batteries and electric cars. We want all these companies to invest abroad, and Belt and Road is a major vehicle for that. Belt and Road is also a fantastic opportunity to make green corridors. Last 10 years, we have seen the Addis Ababa Djibouti corridor, or the Nairobi Mombasa corridors in Africa, or the Yunnan to Laos railroad, or railroad in Indonesia. Many new green corridors. I think in the next decade, we will see a lot more. It should be possible to completely connect the entire high-speed rail system in Southeast Asia. That will mean you can go from Beijing to Singapore in one long day, or a day and a night. And Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Thailand may be connected to such a network in many different ways. We provide a fantastic green transportation system for Southeast Asia. And Indonesia may see the railroad, which is currently from Jakarta to Bandung, being extended all the way to Surabaya, which will link 150 million people living on Java to green high-speed rail. And added to green corridors and renewable energies, Belt and Road is also an opportunity, as President Xi highlighted in a speech in October, for museums, sports, culture, heritage, and the softer aspects of life like education and health, opportunity to share experience on all these. The attitude of the West should not be confrontational to Belt and Road, even if, of course, Belt and Road is also based on Chinese interest. I mean, every foreign policy scheme is based on the interest of our nation. The attitude of the West, in my view, should be to embrace and to cooperate wherever the opportunities to cooperate, to develop, say, African or Latin American nations. Let's look into how we can cooperate. And then it should be to supplement rather than to compete. Look, sometimes Americans are running around in Africa and complaining about high-speed rail from China. Well, China has constructed 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in the last 15 years. United States of America has constructed exactly, we all know, 0. How likely is it that the United States can compete with China in high-speed rail in Africa, or rail at all, when it has not done it at home? Strength abroad always comes from strength at home. Why don't the United States look into its own strength? The United States must still be ahead of China in artificial intelligence. At least they are at the center of the development of artificial intelligence. The United States is strong in medicines. Probably the best vaccines made during COVID came in the West. Why don't the United States then look into how it can complement China's efforts in Africa to help African nations in areas where they may be stronger? For example, offering to make cheap vaccines for the poor in Africa based on the of the money made in the Western markets, where you can develop the vaccines and then make them at a cheap rate in Africa. Rather than compete, why don't we complement and supplement? Then lastly, what should be the overall attitude to Belt and Road and to the Western Chinese relationship? Because also Europe, of course, is benefiting from Belt and Road. Piraeus Harbor in a port in Greece is a clear example. Another one is the new under development Budapest-Belgrade Railroad, and there are many other examples. But we need to manage competition and accelerate cooperation. A few basic principles I think are critical. First, all must be based on the idea of cooperation and respect. Every basic issue and importance in the 21st century is easy to resolve if we work together. Wars in Ukraine or Gaza, climate change, environment destruction, supercharging the economies after COVID, whatever is the issue, let's work together based on mutual respect. The West should respect China. China should respect the West. No one should attempt to or even believe that we can change the political system of other nations. Let's both improve our own systems and make those work. And then on that basic and mutual respect, we can work together. Then secondly, there must be dialogue. I mean, there will always be differences. We may not completely agree, say, as to how to resolve the conflict in Ukraine. Then let there be a dialogue, and that may help solving the issue. The same, of course, with Gaza or Sudan or any other global issues. And when there are disputes coming, say, from different economic interests, of course, the main reason why Madame Yellen went to China was that she's afraid of jobs in America. Every American politician needs jobs at home, but an answer to that is a dialogue with China, maybe to invite Chinese companies to invest in America so that the jobs are coming there rather than just importing from abroad. I mean, United States would enormously benefit from Chinese investments in the electric car industry or the electric battery industry or the solar module industry. I know that many Americans are skeptical to that for geostrategic reasons, but that would be the proper answer. If they are afraid of jobs, invite those with the best technology to come and invest in your country. And then lastly, we need to manage the two concepts of cooperation and competition. Business competition is not bad. That's what driving economic and technological development, that's what driving innovation, and it's very, very good also for the green development. Look, China had no stake or any importance in the old car industry. It had no brand like Toyota or Volkswagen, but then China leapfrogging into electric vehicles made an enormous improvement of that industry, and it forces Western companies to compete. So competition is not bad, that's needed. But competition and cooperation must go hand in hand, and when there are disputes, we need mechanisms for that, like, say, the World Trade Organization. So just to summarize, we are at a very interesting point in human history. China's supercharging the green development in the world. We all need China if we want the world to go green, and if we want to solve climate change and environment destruction. China is the one indispensable nation. But then the West need to find a way to cooperate and compete with China, and the way where we resolve all our disputes in an amendable way through dialogue and mutual respect. Thank you so much for listening. Kjell.
Thank you, Mr. Solheim, for your excellent contribution, wise words for the basis of the Belt and Road Initiative and cooperation. I think I would be happy to hear more voices, or at least the voice of Mr. Solheim is a determining and more visible voice in Norwegian decision-making. And I hope that and other speakers who we have here representing the different European nations will also find their voices more visible in terms of decision-making institutions in Europe. I just say behind me, you see the integration through transport of world economic development through what was referred to as the World Land Bridge, or is intricately connected to the idea of corridors for development. This is not geopolitics. This is inclusive international cooperation. As Mr. Solheim says, that does not exclude healthy competition to improve development among all peoples. But the important point to understand, which is not the dominant position right now in Europe or in the United States, is this kind of replacement of geopolitics. We're no longer in a period in history for simple balance of power. We're in a period right now where human beings and nations need to cooperate in order to avoid potential tragic developments that are looking at us altogether too much in the daily news reports. So I just want to make that point that we need to replace geopolitics as any kind of determining factor in shaping international relations with the kind of win-win cooperation among inclusive cooperation among nation states. And hopefully this will continue to encourage that kind of outlook in our European efforts. So with that said, I would like to give the word to our next speaker, Mr. George Floras, who is the president of the Belt and Road Associates in Greece. So, Mr. Floras, you're very welcome. Please.
Thank you, Stefan.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good morning and good evening to China. I'm George Floras from Greece, from Belt and Road Associates. Our organization strongly supports the Belt and Road Initiative and supports Chinese companies to invest in Greece. Greece-China relations have a long history, which begins more than 2,000 years ago through the exchanges of the ancient Silk Road. Today, China is an important trading partner for Greece, despite the fact that the influence of the USA on the Greek political and economic system is extremely strong. Important points in the relations between the two countries are the following. The two countries are particularly linked by history, as they are the cradles of Eastern and Western civilizations. Chinese people have a special love for Greece because of its history and because of their willingness to visit Greece for tourism. Greece is the first country in Europe to sign an agreement to participate in the Belt and Road Initiative, and to this day remains loyal to this agreement. Greece in 2019 became the became the 17th member of a 17+1 cooperation between China and Central and Eastern European countries. China has under its control the largest port in Greece, the port of Piraeus, which is a strategic asset in China's attempt to reach Europe. China's acquisition of control of the port of Piraeus is now a big issue for the US as they see its strategic role, a strategic role that they completely ignored in 2014 when it was decided to privatize the port, and at that time, only Costco made a bid proposal. Greece stands at the crossroads of three continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa, a unique and advantageous geographical position at the most southeastern point of Europe, at the key point where the land and sea Silk Road cross. Tens of thousands of Chinese have obtained a permanent resident permit in Greece through the Golden Visa program, and they got the right to free movement in the Schengen area. Finally, much of the products that the Chinese import and export are traded through Greek-owned ships. But the truth is that Greece's relations with China are under strong pressure from the USA and the European Union, especially in the current era with the wars around Europe and around Greece. For example, the participation of the Chinese investors in government projects related to energy and infrastructure is prohibited. As I mentioned before, the US would like the port of Piraeus to change hands and not be controlled by the Chinese, which seems impossible, but it's their desire on the other hand. Apart from these pressures, Greece has not yet become an important investment destination for the Chinese, as only a few significant investments have been made, and these only in energy and the port of Piraeus. There is significant scope for investment in the private sector, for example, tourism, with more than 16,000 kilometers of coastline in Greece, more than 6,000 islands, a well-established tourism industry, and 35 million foreign tourists visit Greece every year. Greece presents a prime investment opportunity in the tourism sector. The Greek energy sector. Located at the crossroads between East and West, Greece offers the opportunity to play a key role in the South Balkans and East Mediterranean region energy markets. The ample availability of renewable energy potential, wind, hydro, solar, geothermal, everything, combined with ongoing large-scale infrastructure projects involving Greece, show that Greece will be a key player in the formulation of the EU energy mix, and we provide significant investment opportunities in all energy industries. ICT sector. The information and communication technology sector is one of the most promising in the Greek economy, driven mostly by the demand for automation and digitalization in the Greek public and private sectors. Pharmaceutical industries. Although Greece is 2% of the European population, we produce 10% of the medicines currently exported by the European Union. 5 points for which investment in Greece in the pharmaceutical sector is of interest are regional, regional market potential for generic pharmaceuticals, regional hub for clinical trials, R&D and development know-how, skilled medical personnel, and medical tourism market potential. Greek quality food and agricultural products. Greek food and agriculture have traditionally been one of the major export sectors for Greece, with a strong presence in the European and growing presence in the US food markets. And finally, logistics. Greece stands on the crossroads of the three continents, connecting, since early antiquity, people, goods, and cultures. For that reason, Greece has long been a strategic node for transportation in the greater region. In order to make the most of available investment opportunities, Chinese should become more flexible in their investment strategies. They should realize that Europe and Greece is a fully competitive market following the European rules, which should be followed by everybody. I again welcome today's initiative. Congratulations to the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden, and special thanks to Hussein Askary for all his efforts. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Floras, for representing Greece. This was wise words for people to understand and consider. And I point out that the history of, perhaps on a deeper level, the relationship between China and Greece goes back to the time of Socrates and Confucius, who were near contemporaries in promoting the idea of wisdom. And I think the notion of wisdom and reason, which was represented by the great Greek philosopher Plato, demonstrating the Socratic method, that Socratic method of dialogue is precisely what needs to be implemented in discussions between European nations and China in particular, but in general in the world, especially between Europe, the United States, and China as a whole. So thank you so very much for your comments, and I will now turn to the speaker, Jan Menke Hopma, who is speaking to us from the Netherlands, from Holland, and we are looking forward to hearing your wise contributions.
Yeah, thank you, Hussein. Distinguished viewers of this webinar, good morning or afternoon, depending where you are, of course, in the world. Taja hao. My name is Jan Menke Hopma, and I'm speaking from the Netherlands. This webinar about Belt and Road is very relevant to the Netherlands, since the Netherlands is the second largest European trade partner of China. The value of goods imported from China has more than doubled since 2015, from 29 billion euro to 64 billion in 2022. In my speech, I will talk about the opportunities of the Belt and Road Initiative for the Netherlands, but also go deeper into the challenges and recommendations so that the Netherlands and Europe can also benefit from the BRI. And for the Netherlands, being one of the most innovative countries in the world, innovation is a very important element in the cooperation with China. In the second part of my speech, I will therefore focus on how European companies, universities and research institutes can connect with the Chinese innovation ecosystem via the Yangtze River Delta around Shanghai. But first, I would like to introduce myself and my company, Innovasian BRIX, a bit further to you. With a consultancy and banking career as background, I went to China in 2017, where I became advisor for local Chinese government on attracting foreign investments to their city. In the following years, including during the pandemic, I expanded my network both in China and Europe a lot, which led to setting up my own company in the Netherlands. I called it Innovasian Bridge because my mission is to be the bridge between Europe and China for innovation and technology. And my company helps European technology projects and companies to enter the Chinese market, making use of our network in China among local government, science parks, companies, and investors. But as a two-way bridge, it also helps Chinese companies to enter the European market. So my company also has business partners in several European countries and in different regions of China. And since this year, I'm also appointed as the European advisor for a large Chinese research institute in Jiangsu, about which I will tell you a bit more later. First, I want to talk about the opportunities for the Netherlands related with the BRI. First, infrastructure investment. As a global hub for trade and logistics, the Netherlands can benefit from increased investment in infrastructure projects under the BRI. Dutch expertise in port development, logistics management, and maritime engineering position the country as a valuable partner for China in enhancing connectivity along the maritime Silk Road. Secondly, the trade expansion. The BRI presents also an opportunity for Dutch business to expand their presence in fast-growing markets along the Belt and Road routes. With a strategic location and advanced logistics network, the Port of Rotterdam serves as an ideal gateway for Chinese goods entering Europe, facilitating trade flows and promoting economic cooperation between the two countries. And third, green development. With its focus on sustainable development and green finance, the Netherlands can play a key role in promoting environmentally friendly projects under the BRI. Dutch expertise in renewable energy, water management, and sustainable infrastructure aligns with China's commitment to green growth, offering opportunities for collaboration in areas such as renewable energy generation, waste management, and environmental protection. And fourth, financial services. The Netherlands' well-established financial sector and expertise in banking, insurance, and investment management makes it also an attractive destination for Chinese companies seeking financing and investment opportunities along the Belt and Road routes. Dutch financial institutions can provide valuable support in project financing, risk management, and capital allocation, facilitating the implementation of the BRI projects. But there are also challenges. First, the global geopolitics clearly have a major influence on Sino-Dutch relations. The Netherlands, like other European states, is affected by the competition and ongoing trade and technology war between US and China. And the Netherlands also must navigate these geopolitical considerations carefully, balancing its economic interests with broader strategic concerns and ensuring that its engagement with the BRI is transparent, inclusive, and in line with international norms and standards. Further, the Netherlands must also work collaboratively with its European partners and international institutions to promote transparency, accountability, and responsible lending practices within the framework of BRI, safeguarding the long-term interest of the stakeholders involved. Third, the regulatory environment, the differences in regulatory frameworks, legal systems, and business practices between China and Netherlands can present challenges for Dutch companies operating in BRI countries. The Netherlands must also ensure that its companies are equipped with necessary knowledge, resources, and support to navigate the complex regulatory environments and mitigate risks associated with cross-border business operations. Of course, the environmental and social impact. While the BRI offers opportunities for infrastructure development and economic growth, there are also concerns about its potential environment and social impact. The Netherlands advocates also for sustainable and responsible development practices within the BRI framework. So environmental conservation, social inclusion, and respect for human rights. But it leads also to recommendations how to further strengthen the BRI and the Netherlands cooperation. The Netherlands also should work closely together with its EU partners to develop a unified approach towards the BRI, aligning strategies, priorities, and policies to promote transparency, sustainability, and inclusivity in BRI projects. Also promote sustainable development. The Netherlands advocates also sustainable development practices within the BRI framework, emphasizing environmental conservation, social inclusion, and respect for human rights. And Dutch expertise in sustainable infrastructure, renewable energy, and water management can contribute to the development of environmentally friendly BRI projects. And third, the facilitate technology transfer and innovation. Also, the Netherlands should leverage its innovation ecosystem and technology capabilities to facilitate technology transfer and innovation collaboration with Chinese partners. Joint research and development projects, technology parks, and innovation hubs can foster closer ties between Dutch and Chinese companies, driving innovation and economic growth. And also cooperation between companies from the Netherlands, Europe, and China could help to bring the BRI further to practice and to let the Dutch and European companies also benefit from the advantages it offers. In conclusion, the China Belt and Road Initiative presents both opportunities and challenges for the Netherlands, requiring a strategic and proactive approach to maximize benefits and mitigate risks. By leveraging its strength in infrastructure development, trade facilitation, innovation, and sustainability, the Netherlands can play a constructive role in shaping the future of the BRI and promoting economic cooperation between China and Europe. And since my company is also the advisor for NICE H.E.Cui, I would like to take this opportunity also to explain to you how European companies and institutes can benefit from connecting with the Chinese innovation ecosystem, and this in the Yangtze River Delta around Shanghai. Because the Yangtze River Delta is one of the most globally connected, economically developed, and innovative regions in China. It covers Shanghai and surrounding provinces Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Anhui. In this area alone, 24% of the GDP is earned, and around 30% of all R&D spending in China is done over there. With 40% of the national total, it also had the largest foreign direct investment recipient in China. The manufacturing output of this region is 8% of the global output. And then I go to the national level innovation platform. This is the National Innovation Center par excellence. It's called NICE. It's a national level technology innovation center, which the operating entities being the Shanghai Yangtze Delta Innovation Institute and Jiangsu Industrial Technology Research Institute. Its objective is to realize the transformation from science to technology, with the core mission of promoting key technology research in important fields. It promotes transfer, transformation, and industrialization of scientific and technological achievements in collaboration with industries, universities, and research institutes. And it supplies technologies and commercialization services for industrial development of the Yangtze River Delta region of China. So what does it mean in the practice? It has like 92 R&D platforms, 317 industrial partnerships for R&D, also strategic partners in universities all over the world. And it employs more than 15,000 researchers for applied research. So it works like a two-way bridge in functions like between the industry and academia, and also between the global innovation community and the Yangtze Delta. And how can European companies and institutes work together with NICE, with H.E.Cui? For the universities, it can support partner universities and institutes to carry out R&D, training and technology transfer projects. And and also for multinational companies, it can also provide R&D cooperation with H.E.Cui. For startups, it can also receive funding for feasibility in studies, for feasibility studies in China, how to enter the Chinese market, to apply their technology in China. They can also receive an office for 1 year to build a network there, find a partner, also have R&D services. And when the study is also proven that is a successful feasibility in the Chinese market, they can also further receive further funds from NICE H.E.Cui for R&D in China and commercialization of their company. But I can tell, of course, much more about this, but the time of this webinar is a bit too short for that. So for anyone who likes to know more about cooperation opportunities and the funding possibilities with NICE H.E.Cui, they can also contact me directly. Here's my contact information. And my company is also open for partnerships in Europe and the Asian BRI countries for consultancy and investments. So let's build more bridges together and innovation along the BRI route. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hopma. That was excellent, very insightful perspective on things that the Netherlands can offer and is offering, which I think are generally not fully publicly known. I think we have to bring this kind of relevant information forward. We've had speaker now from Norway, from from the Netherlands, from Greece, demonstrating a will and a spirit that defines the kind of cooperation which would stop the present course towards conflict and war and raise a different flag in all of the different nations. So I'm very grateful for your contribution today. And I emphasize we look forward to continuing webinars where we will be the voice of reason and cooperation, despite the other voices that seem to ignore the message for what the BRI can represent significantly for the world and for Europe. So our next, I'm sorry, the next speaker is from yet another European country, Slovenia, who is a friend and collaborator of BRIX for promoting the Belt and Road. It's Mr. Tomaz Amon, and he is the CEO of Bioanim. And I give you the word, and please go ahead and make your presentation.
Your Excellency, the Ambassador, dear colleagues, my name is Tomaz Amon. I am the President of the Slovene-Chinese Friendship Association and Vice President and Representative for Slovenia for the Chinese Central and Eastern Europe Association for Science and Technology Exchange. Slovene-Chinese Friendship Association, founded in 2006, is helping to build the modern Silk Road. Slovene-Chinese Friendship Association is a non-governmental organization supported solely by its members. Lately, we are particularly active in coordinating the cooperation of scientists with China. If interested, feel free to contact me regarding this, and I shall help you. We help to apply for the title H.E.Cui, what means overseas scientist. In other words, scientist that is recognized by Chinese and supported accordingly. In addition, if there come together several doctors of science, Chinese help them with travel and subsistence costs to visit China and explore the possibilities of cooperation. Such a team that we help to build is going to China this June. My personal opinion is that Slovenia is going to have an increasingly favorable position as the geopolitical situation is changing. Traditionally, the Western Europe was more developed than the Eastern Europe. However, this might change in the following years. I consider this an organic process. Like in the previous century, people from East Germany saw that the life was better in West Germany and so tended to go there. Now people will tend to go in pursuit of better working and living conditions to the Central and Eastern Europe. For example, when the problems in Ukraine settle down, I expect that the only country that is capable of restoring Ukraine is China. Firstly, China is not a part of this conflict. Secondly, China has the knowledge and resources to convert Ukraine from war-torn country into possibly the most developed country in Eastern Europe. Ukraine could then well replace Germany as the industrial hub of Europe. There will, of course, be the fast railway from Beijing, reaching Central and Eastern European cities like Ljubljana, Vienna, Budapest, Zagreb, Belgrade, and so on. When this transformation takes place, Slovenia has to be clever, as it was in 1991, resulting in a bright future for Slovenia. I consider this initiative as my giveaway for the next generations that will follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for representing Slovenia. We're grateful for your remarks, and the China-Slovenian Friendship Association will continue to grow and contribute in future webinars and contributions to our efforts. The last speaker for the presentation part of this webinar will be my colleague, Mr. Hussein Askary. I will once again mention, as I think everyone is aware, it's quite a major development worldwide, is that the President of China, Xi Jinping, is going to be arriving in the coming days in France and will then continue his journey to both Hungary and Serbia. I would welcome the possibility that his journey will soon include all of the countries that we have in this webinar, and that the spirit of working together will continue as we wish very much to see done. So with that said, Mr. Askary, please go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Stephen, Your Excellency, Ambassador H.E.Cui, your dear panelists and all guests. It's a great honor for me to address this webinar, very interesting event, which is, I guess, unique. What I'm going to discuss is a few points which pertain to the bigger picture of China-Europe cooperation in the world, which both Ambassador H.E.Cui, Mr. Solheim, and others discussed, because we have at least 3 major crises on the borders of Europe, which need to be addressed in the context of the Belt and Road Initiative, which I think is the appropriate platform for dealing with these issues. One is we have the Ukraine war, which is a very, very complicated situation and dangerous situation, but also everybody realizes it has reached a stalemate or the end of the road, and a peaceful solution is needed. China's 10-point proposal for solving this conflict diplomatically, but also integrating Ukraine and the reconstruction of Ukraine's economy, which is devastated, into the Belt and Road Initiative itself, making Ukraine, instead of a wall, Ukraine has become a Berlin Wall now between East and West. We can make Ukraine a bridge between East and West. This is one part. The other 2 issues is we have the Gaza war, Palestinian and the Israeli war against the Palestinians, which has to end with a ceasefire, and it's imperative that a 2-state solution is discussed. But even there, without economic development, we cannot secure peace. I'm involved with the International Schiller Institute to design and promote a policy, a plan called the Oasis Plan for the peace through economic development in West Asia, so-called Middle East and North Africa, which is based on building infrastructure for water especially, but other infrastructure to build the grounds for peace. This is something which the Oslo Agreement failed to do. The other issue which pertains is also, I mean, the Gaza war is also on the borders of Europe. The third issue is the never-ending discussion about migration, immigration from Africa and the Middle East, from unstable regions to Europe. And even there, I believe that Europe-China cooperation in these regions is crucial to stabilize this situation. Now, you all probably know I am the co-author of this book in 2017. It's called Extending the New Silk Road to West Asia and Africa, where there are blueprints which we brought from African nations, from Western Asian nations, and incorporated in our vision for economic development, but also peace through economic development. Now, recently, a few weeks ago, I made a tour of Xinjiang province in China, the Uyghur Autonomous Region. And what I saw there fits perfectly into this picture for Europe-China cooperation, because Xinjiang shared many of the challenges shared by nations in the Middle East and Africa, like the threat of terrorism, extremism, separatism. You have isolation, in geographical isolation. You have Xinjiang is one of the most arid desert areas in the world, but it shares all these things with the rest of West Asia and North Africa and many African nations. The deserts stretch from the Atlantic all the way to the Gobi Desert in China. So these are all interrelated, but the way China managed to resolve the situation in Xinjiang and turn Xinjiang not only as a bridge to West Asia, Central Asia, and Europe, but Xinjiang is rapidly becoming a major industrial and economic and ecological center with all the technologies. I'm writing articles about this. I'll do videos on this, but I just want to share with you some of the visions I have, which I think Europe and the United States can work with China on that. So this is the cover of my book. There are, like, we have, everybody's talking about the Build Back Better world, which the United States and G7 proposed, and also the Global Gateway, which the EU proposed, as a replacement for the Belt and Road. I don't believe, in the Belt and Road Institute, we don't believe that there's a replacement. There should be a replacement. There should be an integration of the different initiatives, but it should be based on solid ideas and plans, not merely just to talk, because this is what we, for example, we have in Africa, there is an African plan to integrate all African nations through infrastructure, African highways and African railways. Now, China is the most active party in this integration process in Africa. We saw as was mentioned, the Djibouti Addis Ababa railway, and we have the Mombasa Nairobi railway. There are many railways in West Africa and North Africa are being built. We have actually the plan to integrate all the rivers and lakes of Africa, as we have done in Europe through the Danube, Main Canal, and Rhine River integration, which is a very important. The same thing is possible in Africa. We have a huge ecological environmental crisis in Lake Chad, which is drying up since the 1970s. And this is creating enormous pressure on millions, tens of millions of people in 8 African countries. Many of them might want to migrate to other parts, including to Europe. But there is a plan which we advocate in this book and with the Schiller Institute, is to build a canal to bring water from the Congo River tributaries. This is a long, big project, 2,000-kilometer canal, to bring a small portion of the Congo River water to the Lake Chad and generate power, use this for transportation, but also create new agro-industrial regions around Lake Chad, which all countries can benefit from. We actually played a role in having a Chinese and Italian company to sign a memorandum of understanding to make a feasibility study of this project, but also the Lake Chad Commission, which includes many nations in Africa, have endorsed this plan. There is the enormous potential for hydropower in Africa, like the Grand Inga Dam in the Congo, on the Democratic Republic of Congo, which can provide up to 40,000 megawatts of power. This is double the size of China's biggest hydropower, Three Gorges Dam. Now, there was an agreement between a Chinese Sino-Hydro and a Spanish company to do the preliminary work on this project, but unfortunately, the Spanish company withdrew. The EU is opposed to it, and the World Bank, too, are opposed to this project, which can actually provide electricity for tens of millions of Africans. We have many more such projects that can be built for, jointly by Chinese and European companies and financed, and built jointly with the African nations themselves. The plans we are presenting here are not Chinese or European or American plans. These are plans African nations have envisioned for their development. This is what will be a very, very important contribution for not only stabilizing Africa, but also building Africa as the next world workshop. Africa will be the biggest economic region in the world. There will be 3 billion young Africans by 2050 when the rest of the world is getting old. And also we have enormous resources there. So my point is that we Europeans are missing the train because the world is changing not only negatively with all these crises, because big developments are taking place. For example, the Arab world will soon replace the EU as the biggest partner of trade and economic cooperation with China. So we will come in the second hand. There are nations in the region like Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Ethiopia have now joined the BRICS Plus, and they sit in a very special geographical area with enormous natural resources, human resources, and financial resources. These will be integrated into the Belt and Road. I give you one example. If Europeans think that we have monopoly on certain technologies, we have to forget about that. For example, 2 months ago, Egypt completed building one of the large dams in Tanzania with the Egyptian construction company, Egyptian technology. Of course, the power generators were imported from China, but this is the first time 2 African countries managed to build such a sophisticated project. So Europe's technologies and capabilities will soon be unnecessary if we are not active now to participate in these projects. Other nations will take our place and we will be left behind in this whole global process. So we have enormous potential, technologies, know-how, human resources in Europe that are very, very important for peace and economic development around the world. So we should use them now because the world will not wait for Europe. We will be missing the train. Just to end this with, I also mentioned this in my book, Africans should come to Europe, not in dangerous rubber boats, but they should come to Europe on high-speed railway. There are 3 major connection points from Spain to Morocco, from Sicily and Italy to Tunisia, and of course the Bosphorus between Turkey, Turkey building the bridge. We actually have, with engineers from Italy and other countries, envisioned these tunnels to build high-speed rail between Africa and so Africans should come to Europe, but not as refugees fleeing from crisis, war, and environmental degradation, but as tourists, as scholars, as businessmen. And this is the natural state of relations among nations that have to be promoted. And I'm very happy we have this webinar today to present such visions of cooperation among nations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Askary, for a global perspective on the type of development that we wish to achieve. I want to emphasize that we have quite a bit of time remaining to have more open contributions from the participants, questions and answers to the speakers, and comments on how people are perceiving what we want to continue with this initial launching of Europeans for the Belt and Road initiative. I think this has a great potential of uniting nations and people in Europe around the kinds of solutions that we've heard. I underline that when you listen to the presentations of Mr. Amon, Mr. Hopma, Mr. From Greece, Mr. Floras, as well as our friend from Norway, Mr. Erik Solheim. And there were others who we had invited who were not able to be here. We have a very good friend who has worked with us from Italy, who is fighting to promote the continued development of the Memorandum of Understanding, which was unfortunately not continued in Italy, Mr. Geraci, the president of the Belt and Road Institute in Portugal, who I met while I was was invited guest at the Belt and Road Forum in celebrating the 10th year of the Belt and Road Initiative in Beijing in October 2023. We will go forward because the world needs cooperation, inclusiveness, and it will not survive with any other form. We see in these presentations that there are solutions. There is no reason that these solutions cannot be policy. That is the message we have to carry forward to Brussels and to other places in Europe. There are solutions. We do not continue to have to quarrel and promote conflict as if cooperation is not a possibility. Rather, quote, security interests, which are defined by a certain continued idea of dominance by Western, old Western European policymaking, that will not work anymore. The world will not accept that. And it's time for Europe and the United States to join in another spirit. I simply say I am an American as well as a Swedish citizen, and I can speak as an American citizen that it is a long time since we had a leader, the founder of the United States, Benjamin Franklin, who was considered the first xenophile, who actually loved China and understood China as a model, as a model for the development of the North American colonies, which ultimately became the United States. That should become the spirit that the United States revives in friendship with China. Unfortunately, that is not the present policy of the United States at this time, as remarks from Mr. Solheim also indicated. We need to change that. We need to change the spirit and the thinking inside the United States and Europe and Brussels to recover a different idea for how we can solve world problems. So I leave the possibility now to include comments and questions. I think we have a number of people who've been also asking about President Xi Jinping's visit that is upcoming to France and to Hungary and to Serbia as a beginning phase of how we can go forward.
I will stop the recording and start again, so we have a separate video, and then I will, if you allow me, moderate the Q&A session